I'd like to start on a personal note. This conference holds a special place in my heart for a lot of different reasons. One is because, again, the conference organizers put on a wonderful event. This is difficult to do. Also, the presenters. I've attended a lot of sessions today, and I've heard a lot of great content, so that's another reason that I really like this conference. And the attendees. I've had some wonderful conversations at the table and hallways, and I'm meeting a lot of great people. But there's another reason that I really have a special place for KWSQA, targeting quality. I've been speaking professionally and publicly for about 5 years. In that time, I've spoken all over the world at conferences and corporations, but my very first conference talk was right here at KWSQA in October of 2014. I'm back on the stage today keynoting for my 100th public speaking event, so I'm very, very honored and happy to be here. I'm glad that, thank you very much. I'm glad that you chose to spend your afternoon with me. You don't really have a choice. It's kind of a captive audience, but when I did this in 2014, I was so jazzed to be on stage that I took a selfie, and that's how I'd like to start today, with a selfie to commemorate 100 speaking events. Smile, KWSQA. There we go. Thank you very much. All right, let's get this thing started. This is more than that. I'm going to explain what that means as we go. We're going to talk about a lot of things about self-identity, self-exploration, who you are and who you can be. But I'd like to start with a personal story. So I'm going to tell this story for a couple different reasons. One is the story actually happened to me. It's a real personal story. And a lot of the things that happen in the story will exemplify some of the topics and subjects I'm going to speak about today. Another reason I'm telling this story, it was the inspiration for this very talk. After this experience happened, I thought about it, I ruminated, and I thought, man, this would make a good talk. It really was meaningful to me, and it might be meaningful to you as well. So first, a little bit of background about me. I started testing in 1993. I dropped out of Ohio State University at age 19 and started working at the Quality Assurance Department at CompuServe. Anyone ever heard of that company? Read about it in history books, perhaps. It's an old company. So I worked there for 4 years, started as a co-op. They hired me full-time. Over the next 25 years, I did software testing all around central Ohio. I worked at banks and insurance companies. I worked in retail. I worked at an airline. I worked at research and development. I've been a consultant. I've been a full-time employee. I've worked with onshore and offshore teams. I've worked in a lot of different methodologies, whether they're stairway or spiral or agile or waterfall. I've used a lot of different tools. I spent a lot of my career doing automated testing with tools that don't even exist anymore. The last 6 years, I helped organize my own conference, QA the Highway, in Columbus. The call for paper is open, QAthehighway.com if you're interested. So I have a lot of testing experience. But sometimes, now I'm a professional speaker. I've been doing this for 5 years. And sometimes I still take consulting gigs just to make ends meet. And the way I find those opportunities is I work with local consulting companies and recruiters, and they present me with opportunities. So in the not too recent past, a recruiter called me that knows me pretty well and said, hey, Damian, I have an opportunity. Are you interested? I said, I don't know. Tell me about it. He said, well, there's a local commercial realty company, basically mall landlords. And they've recently merged with another commercial realty company. And there's a clash and chaos because there's a clash of people and processes and tools and all this stuff, and it's causing chaos. And what they'd like is to form a small team to come in and do some business process analysis, figure out how they do business. They'd like you to analyze the way they do business and help improve it, so business process improvement. They'd also like somebody to come in and do business process documentation. All the things that they do, make it better and write them down. He says, are you interested? I said, yeah, why not? You know, throw my resume in the mix. A few days later, the hiring manager, let's call him Mike. Mike called me and said, hey, Damian, I got a chance to look at your resume. I went to your website, read some of your blog posts, and it all looks great. And I'm interested to see if this is a good fit, but I have a question and a concern. He says, my question is, do you think that you can do this job? And he says, the reason I asked that question is because I have a concern. He says, after looking at your resume and your past experience and your website, it looks to me like you're just a tester. Ouch. Ouch. Now, I'm pretty proud of my past. I've done a lot of things that I'm proud of in my career, being a tester. But the way he phrased it, just a tester, made me feel really uneasy. It made me feel diminished. So I let that question kind of hang in the air for a moment, and I thought, how am I supposed to respond? And then a moment of inspiration, here's what I said. I said, well, Mike, what if I told you for the past 25 years I've been learning certain things and developing those skills and abilities and knowledge and refining and honing those things? Things like process analysis, looking at the way that people do things and analyzing the way that they're done. Process improvement, finding out the way things are done and making them better. Process documentation, looking at all these things that people do and how they do them better and writing them down so they're better able to communicate and collaborate and for historical reasons. But what if I told you I did all those things in a testing context? For the last 25 years, I've done test process analysis, test process improvement, test process documentation. So if I understand this opportunity correctly, all you're really asking me to do is switch context to business. And he laughed and hung up the phone. No, that didn't happen. He said, that's a pretty good answer. He says, all right, I can't argue with that. So he gave me the opportunity, and the epilogue is, it went very well. I thought I provided a lot of value to the team. I was able to help them analyze their processes, help them make their processes better, write a lot of things down, and it was a success. But what that made me realize is that I'm not just a tester. I'm much, much more than that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Specifically, I'm going to talk about unjusting yourself. What are the labels that we put on ourselves? When we look in a mirror, who do we see exactly? And sometimes those labels can cause anxiety. And how should you respond to anxiety? Then I'll talk about rediscovering yourself, who you are right now, your as is, and then who you can be, your potential, future value. So, you look down at the table, you might see some hello, I'm stickers. Now don't touch them yet, we're going to use those a little bit later. But typically when you see these stickers, they have this type of information. When people wear these, they have their name on them, maybe they have their job title, and maybe the company that they work at. That's a very typical type of hello badge that you see people wearing. But since I can't read your badges and you're not wearing these right now and I can't see what it says, I'd like to get to know some of you a little bit better. So I'm looking around the room and I'm looking for people trying to avoid eye contact here. Let's see. You, sir, right there in the purplish shirt. You had to look down. Am I wearing a purple shirt? Yes. Hi, sir. What's your name? What's your name?
My name is Hong Wei Cao.
Say that again?
Hong Wei.
Hong Wei.
Cao.
Cao. Where are you from, Hong Wei?
I'm from Home Hardware.
Hong Hardware. Can you spell that for me?
Home.
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 Home Hardware. Okay, that's the company. Oh, where do you live? I hope you don't live at Home Hardware. That would be very uncomfortable. Sir? Kitchener. Oh, so you're a local. All right, everyone say hello. Say your name again.
My name is Hong Wei.
Hong Wei. Everyone say hello, Hong Wei. There we go. All right, so you don't live at Home Hardware. You're right here from Kitchener. So you just home, not the Home Hardware. Yes. So I did a little bit of research about Kitchener, and I learned a little bit more about it. I didn't know much about Kitchener before coming here, and in 2014 I learned a little bit about it. It's the twin city with Waterloo. Kitchener and Waterloo are the twin cities, and if you add in Cambridge, it's the Tri-Cities. So when I think about Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, Tri-Cities, sometimes they're also called the creative capital of Canada. Has anyone ever heard that nickname? No. Well, now you know. Kitchener also has a nickname, the creative capital of Canada. I don't know why that is the case, but it tells me something's going on here that might be pretty creative. Sometimes it's called K-Dub or K-Town. Waterloo has a nickname I read called the Lou. I don't know if that's an insult or a nickname. I'm not really sure, but welcome. Thank you for coming. Anyone not local to Kitchener? Hands? Right there, sir. Yes. Hi, what's your name?
Eric.
I know you, Eric. Everyone say hello, Eric.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Eric. Where are you from? Ohio. Where in Ohio specifically? Hudson. Hudson. What is Hudson? Tell me something interesting about Hudson. I don't know anything about Hudson. Hudson is that interesting, folks.
We used to be the home of Case University.
Used to be the home of Case University.
It merged with Western and became Case Western Reserve.
So it could have been Hudson Western Reserve, perhaps.
They left.
They left. The most interesting thing about Hudson is that there used to be a university that left for better... Oh. All right, well, I have learned something about Hudson. It's not a very positive thing, but... All right, how about, folks, who thinks they came the farthest today? All right, we just have some hands here, over there. Yes, you. What's your name? Emna. Everyone say hello, Emna. Emna, where are you from? Tunisia. Wow. Can anyone beat? That's incredible. Tell me something about Tunisia. I don't know much about Tunisia either. It's near the Mediterranean, all right. It's what? The Sahara, the desert thing, right? Yeah. Well, okay, so Tunisia, we have Hudson, Ohio, we have a local Kitchener here. So we have folks from all over, and just from the name of these cities alone, I don't know a whole lot, but I've learned something about Hudson. Now I know that the Sahara is in Tunisia. Okay, I did not know that previously. Kitchener, we learned a little bit about some nicknames that tells me a little bit more about the city. But you can't really tell much about a city just from the name. Myself, I'm from Columbus. Now, when I travel around the States and around the world, I often have to add, comma, Ohio, because otherwise I get blank stares. People say Columbus. So Columbus, Ohio, just below the Lake Erie and the Great Lakes. That's where I'm born and raised. I've been there my entire life. Now, if you know anything about Ohio, perhaps you know that it's the home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. OH! Not even a single I-O in the whole room. Oh. When I say OH, the proper response is I-O. OH. There we go. If you know anything else about Columbus, maybe you've heard some nicknames. Columbus is sometimes referred to as Cap City. It's called that because it's the capital city of Ohio. So if you didn't know that and you heard the nickname, that might give you some more information about it. Columbus is sometimes called Arch City. That nickname comes from 100 years ago. One of the main thoroughfares in Columbus used to have arches that went all the way up and down, and those arches had lights on them, and that light would carry electricity all the way up and down 100 years ago, so they called it Arch City. Columbus is sometimes called the Crossroads of Ohio because Interstate 70 and 71 that go all the way north, south, and east-west through the United States crisscross right through Columbus, Ohio, so it's called the Crossroads of Ohio. But that's not all that Columbus is. Columbus is much, much more than that, but you can't tell that just from those little nicknames. Did you know that the home of the Buckeyes, the college football team, they play in a stadium called Ohio Stadium, and it's the third biggest stadium in the United States, fourth biggest in the world. Holds 108,000 people. I was just there last Saturday for a game. Didn't get inside the stadium, but outside the stadium was another 500,000 people tailgating. It's a big event. And that's what it's like pretty much every Saturday. Ohio is also a fashion center. After New York and LA, you don't think of Columbus, Ohio as being a fashion center, but it's home to Abercrombie & Fitch, it's home to Limited, Express Brands, DSW, Designer Shoe Warehouse. So there's a lot of fashion centers that are in Columbus, Ohio. Columbus has a population that's bigger than both Cincinnati and Cleveland combined. There's almost 900,000 people in Columbus. Columbus is home to a world-class zoo, primarily because of Jack Hanna, Director Emeritus. He travels around the world promoting the zoo. Columbus is a lot more than that. It's more than just a capital city or a place where two interstates cross. So if cities can be more than that, what else can be more than that? Here we are at the Targeting Quality Conference. Now, how many testers do we have in the room? Lots. All right. In the orange, hello, sir. What's your name? Kevin, hello. Everyone say hello, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. You raised your hand indicating I am a tester. What's your title?
Currently, it's a product manager.
Product manager. I thought you said you were a tester. So Kevin is a liar. We've learned that. Exposed, yes.
Aren't we all testers?
Very, very astute point. Yes. In some sense, in some general way, we are all testers. Very good. So tell me, as a product manager, you do testing on the side, as a primary hat sometimes. Tell me about it.
I would say I do it most of the time.
Most of the time. So you've been to a lot of sessions today?
Some?
Did you find value in them at this testing conference?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. Well, hear that, organizers? You're doing well. Speakers, very good. He's found value. Any non-testers in the crowd? People that don't wear that hat primarily. In the back there, are you a non-tester, sir?
Yes.
All right, what's your name?
Jake.
Jake! Everyone say hello, Jake.
Hi, Jake.
Hi, Jake. So you're a non-tester. Get him! Yeah. Jake, what do you do? What's your title?
I'm a software developer.
Software developer. Maybe I wasn't kidding. Get him! So Jake, here you are at Targeting Quality, a conference about quality for testers. Why on earth are you here?
Because I care about quality.
Oh, wonderful answer. Now give him a round of applause. Very good. Great answer, Jake. Thank you. So I'd like to point out that I've been to a lot of sessions today that were specifically about testing, for testers. But I've also been to sessions today that are ostensibly for testers. But they can also be valuable for people that aren't in testing. There was a session by Nishi Grover Garg that said, gamify your agile workspace. Did I get the title right? Nishi, are you in here? There you are. Did I get that correct? So it was a lightning talk. It was fabulous. It was about a technique to do better retrospectives. Now, that can definitely help you if you're on an agile team and an agile methodology, but the idea of reviewing what you do and helping figure out ways to make it better can be extended beyond agile teams. So the things that I learned in her session can definitely be used outside of testing context or agile context. Bailey, I was in your session this morning. Bailey Hanna had one, you want me to test? Did I get the inflection right? Yeah. You want me to test? I found it to be a wonderful session. There's a lot of things that were in your session that are going to come up in my talk as well. They're very much in line. But talking about you want me to test, it's not just a tester's test. It's about whole team testing and a moving quality to the left, not just testing. But that could be useful for anyone in the crowd that happens to be a tester, but it could also be useful for Jake back there, someone that's not a tester, to learn how to review the things that you've done and make them better through a retrospective, or to learn how to have a more quality mindset. So here we are at a targeting quality testing conference, but it's not just about testing. It's more than that. So cities can be more than that. Conferences can be more than that. What else can be more than that? What about people? Hi, my name is Damian Synadinos, and I'm a speaker with Ineffable Solutions. But as I said at the top, that's not all that I am. I said that I'm also a tester. I spent a long time software testing. And that's not all that I am. I also mentioned that I help organize a conference. Since for the last 6 years, QA of the Highway is a conference that I've been involved with. I'm an artist. I've been drawing cartoons since I was a child. And I don't get to use my artistic skills much anymore. I do my own slides, and I draw for my family and friends. I'm an improviser. 12 years ago, I took an improv class, and that led me to forming a group. And I've done improv shows all over. I've done bar prov and comedy clubs and corporate engagements. I've done a lot of improv. That led me into acting. A lot of people that are improvers are also actors, and that led me to acting in a few dramas and comedies in Columbus. After doing that for a while, I wondered, can I do this myself? So I wrote a play. I wrote a play, a short 10-minute comedy. It was produced in Columbus and also produced in New York and Pittsburgh, reviewed on TV, no less. I'm an author. I wrote a children's book a year ago. It introduces children to the idea of improv comedy. It's secretly teaching them life lessons. I'm a son. Any sons in here? Really? I'm a brother. Any brothers in here? Any older brothers? All right, I'm an older brother. Hear it for us. I'm a husband. I got married about 15 years ago. And, all right, that's not exactly true. I'm a divorcee, so yeah, it did not go great, sorry. But, okay, I have good news. I got married again, so I'm a husband again. Yes, things went much better the second time. I'm a father. Alina is 8 years old. She's such a beautiful little time sink. I'm a father again. Zachary is 6 years old, and he takes up a lot of my time, and I love him so much. I'm a golfer. I've been golfing for many, many years, poorly at that. I'm a bowler. I played in leagues for over 15 years. It's probably more accurate to say I'm someone that golfs and someone that bowls, though, probably rather than golfer or bowler. I'm a rounder. Anyone know what rounders are? A rounder is a fancy word for poker player. I've been playing poker for over 20 years, online and in back rooms. I'm a gamer. I've been doing computer games since a TRS-80 color computer in the 80s. I'm confident. I'm feeling very confident right now. Yes, it's going well, I think. Yes, I'm also terribly nervous, as any proper speaker should be. I'm feeling a little nervous that this could go south at any moment. Something that kind of describes someone that's confident and nervous is an ambivert. That's someone that displays properties of both extroversion and introversion. I'm curious. I think that that's an important quality to be an effective tester and an effective human being. I'm very, very curious. I'm passionate. Are you getting that yet? I'm extremely passionate about what I do. I hope you're getting that from my voice.
Self-absorbed.
Okay. I won't go through the rest of these then. Thank you. All right, so sometimes others can label you and you really have no control over how they label you. So I hope that this was a silly demonstration that each and every one of these stickers is true. I am a golfer and a gamer, and I'm a husband and a father times two, and I'm a tester and I'm a speaker. And while all of these labels are true, any one of them by itself is not holistically true. I'm all of these things at once. And if you see me as only one thing, that means you might not see me as one other thing. So this story, this demonstration kind of reminds me of a story. It's an old Indian parable about the blind man and the elephant. And if you're unfamiliar with it, I'll give you a quick example of how it goes. There's an elephant, you see, and there's these blind guys you see, and they've never seen an elephant for obvious reasons, but they've never experienced an elephant. They don't even have a concept of what an elephant is. So one by one, they go and start to touch the elephant in different places to try and figure out what exactly is an elephant. And one touches the trunk, and one touches the tail, and one touches the side, and the leg, and the tusk, and they touch it in different places. And afterwards, they get back together, and they say, okay, so let's figure out what exactly is an elephant. And they start to compare notes. And the one guy that touched the trunk says, well, an elephant is very much like a snake, you see. And the other guy that touched the side of the elephant says, no, an elephant is much like a wall. And the person that touched the leg said, you're both wrong. An elephant is like a tree trunk. And the one that touched the tail said an elephant is like a rope. And the one that touched the tusk says it's more like a spear. And the one that touched the ear says it's like a fan. Once again, all of them, each individual person was absolutely correct, but they weren't holistically correct. An elephant is like a wall and a tree trunk and a rope and a snake, but that's not all that it is. An elephant is more than that. But you can't get a concept of what an elephant is unless you look at all those things together. So to really drive this point home, I'll give you a personal anecdote. As I said, I'm an artist, and I mostly draw my own slides, and I draw from my family and friends. So in the not-too-recent past, my young nephew Peter came to me and said, Uncle Damian, would you draw me a picture, please? And I said, absolutely. What would you like me to draw you, Peter? He said, could you draw me a robot? I said, sure, Peter, I like to draw robots. Let me get right on that. And he said, wait, Uncle Damian, I've changed my mind. I want a pirate. Will you draw me a pirate? I said, all right, Peter, I'll draw you a pirate. I got out my pen. He said, actually, I've changed my mind. I want a pig. I like pigs. And I said, all right, Peter. And he said, no, actually, I do want a robot. He said, no, actually, I want a pirate. Uncle Damian, can you draw me a pig? No, I want a robot. No, I want a pirate. I want a pig, Uncle Damian. I want a robot, a pirate, a pig, a robot. I said, Peter, stop. And this is what I drew him. I drew him a robot pirate pig. I think we can all agree that picture's incredible. But the point of this is just like all the labels, just like the parable of the blind man and the elephant. When you look in a mirror, do you see yourself as just a tester? Do you see yourself as just a product manager or just a developer? Or do you see yourself holistically as a robot pirate pig? Are you able to see the multi-facets that each of us are all at the same time? Because that's who you are. It's not what you do. So, this is a guy named Soren. Sorry, there it is. Everyone say hello, Soren. You actually did it. Wow, all right. Soren Kierkegaard, Danish philosopher, he has a quote that I really love about labels. It says, once you label me, you negate me. Now, when he said this, he had an idea in his head, and he chose these words to express that idea, and I can't go ask him exactly what he meant because he's dirt, but I can interpret what he meant. And this is what that particular quote means to me. When you label me, you negate me means while labels might explicitly give, they also implicitly take. So if somebody looks at me and they say, Damian, you are a tester, that's explicitly stating something about me. But that might also implicitly state that I'm not a developer. And that might be true, but it also might not be true. So while labels can explicitly give, they can also implicitly take. They can imply things that may or may not be true about you. Now, labels aren't inherently bad. People say, oh, so you should stop using labels. No, you can't function without labels. Labels help us categorize, they help us organize, they help us communicate. Every word that I'm saying right now is a label. Every word is just a label, a word that represents a much bigger idea. This is why dictionaries exist. Dictionaries are just groups of labels with the associated meaning. So you can't function without labels. You can't form concepts. But if used improperly, labels can be very limiting. They can be restricting. They can make you feel diminished. They can create unfair stereotypes. So you have to be very careful with this thing. They're not inherently good or bad. They're just a thing that can be used properly or improperly. I'd like to talk about one specific label that came from my story, the word just. In my story, Mike said, Damian, I'm concerned. Can you do this job because you're just a tester? Now, in 2011, they did a study of the Oxford English Dictionary corpus. 2 billion words. They looked at all of them, and they determined that the 57th most common word in the English language was the word just. That's amazing. The word just seemed surprising to me when I heard that. Why is that word so common? Well, there's a lot of different reasons, but one perhaps is because it's a very versatile word. Just can mean many different things. As an adjective, it can mean something that's morally good, right, or fair. KWSQA organizers were just in asking me to keynote. As an adverb, it can mean nearby. Where was the keynote? It was just over there. It can mean recently. Did you see the keynote? Yeah, I just saw it. It can mean precisely or exactly. What did you think of the keynote? It was just what I wanted. Quite, very, especially, or really, as emphasis. Did you enjoy the keynote? It was just wonderful. It can also mean possibility or perhaps to express, did the keynote help you? It just might help. But there's another meaning of just, and this is the meaning that was used when that person told me that I'm just a tester. Only, merely, simply. He said you're just a tester. He said you're merely a tester, Damian. You're only a tester. And again, that made me feel diminished. It made me feel small. And it wasn't true. I'm more than that. It took me some time to realize that, but at the time, that caused me anxiety. It made me feel a certain way. I got a knot in my stomach, my throat tightened. How many people here have ever felt scared? I saw some of you not raise your hands. I assume because you were afraid. Yes, see? Okay. Everyone feels fear and scared. Now, to be fair, I'm using anxiety and fear and being scared interchangeably when there's actually a meaningful difference. Fear is about objective, real threats and danger. Anxiety is more about uncertainty, uncertain danger. Think about if you're going to go for a hike in the woods. Before you leave your house or cabin, you might think, ooh, I might run into a bear today. And you might feel nervous about that. You might sweat, your stomach might get in knots, but you also might not run into a bear. Now, if you take the hike and you're walking down the path and a bear is in front of you, you're right to feel scared. That's a real objective thing. But anxiety is more about uncertainty. And that's the first definition, worrying about something with an uncertain outcome. This is interesting to me because once I realized that, boy, my throat is getting tight, I'm starting to sweat, why am I feeling this particular way? Am I scared? Is this thing that I'm scared of an objective, real threat? Or is it something that might happen but also might not happen? When Mike said, you're just a tester, and he offered me the job, my anxiety didn't go away. I said, I like the job, but my anxiety increased. I thought, what if he's right? What if I am just a tester? What if I fail at this opportunity? But then when I started to learn more about anxiety, I realized I might not fail at this opportunity. And turns out I didn't. It went well. But anxiety is about uncertainty. Now, there's another definition of anxiety that's also very telling. The desire for something to happen or to do something. Now, why is this interesting? On its own, it's not terribly interesting, but when compared to the first definition, it becomes very interesting. The first one's worrying about something, while the second one is desiring for something. Seems almost paradoxical that this feeling of anxiety can be worrying about something while simultaneously desiring for that thing. Now, I'm not the first person to realize that there's contradictory feelings that come with anxiety. Back to Soren Kierkegaard, he described it as standing on a tall ledge or cliff. In his book, The Concept of Anxiety, 1844, he says that anxiety feels like standing on the edge of a tall building. He says you're looking into the boundlessness of your own possibilities and it can make you feel dizzy. And if you have ever experienced anxiety, it is very much like feeling dizzy. It's that kind of uneasy feeling. Jean-Paul Sartre, another existentialist philosopher, said that when you realize that you can and indeed must label yourself and look into the boundlessness of all the potential that you have, it can make you feel very dizzy. Now that sounds kind of daunting and intimidating, like, okay, so anxiety sounds horrible. But Soren to the rescue offers some advice. He says, for those that understand that anxiety is about uncertainty, and uncertainty means that things might happen, but they also might not. Anxiety can serve as becomes a serving spirit that against its will can lead you where you wish to go. Now if you think about that, here I am presented with this opportunity to help with business process analysis, improvement, and documentation, and I felt really nervous about it because I said, I'm going to fail. And I realized, wait, I'm going to fail is a fear, and that's not true. I might fail, and that's anxiety. It's about uncertainty. Maybe instead of fleeing from this thing, I should go towards it because it's an opportunity that I might not get again. So I was encouraged to go towards things, not just for that example, but in the rest of my life. As I learn more about anxiety, whenever I start to feel a certain way and I start to get sweaty and nervous and shaky, I thought, why am I feeling this way? Is it because an objective, real thing that's absolutely going to happen? Or is it because of something that might happen but also might not happen? And that might not happen oftentimes, not always. This is a very tough advice even for myself to follow. The fact that it might not happen means sometimes I go towards it and wonderful things happen. So it's a way that sometimes is more effective to deal with anxiety. Another person that kind of more recent times recommends facing anxiety, this is Kent Beck, creator of Extreme Programming. And he wrote a blog post in 2018 called Publish Everything, parentheses, pretty much. In it he says, the times that I've avoided publishing, it has been because of my fear of rejection or my fear of judgment. He goes on to say that if I had listened to my fears, I would have missed out on getting my important message to many of my readers. So if he had listened to his fears, he would have gone away. Now, I would have preferred if he didn't use the word fear and used anxiety instead, because fear implies that he's going to be judged, he's going to be rejected. And that's not necessarily the case. If he had said, if I had listened to my anxiety, I might have missed out, that makes more sense to me. But the point is still there. He's encouraging people to face their anxiety, to go towards it rather than flee from it. And that's the point of this. So, you might be thinking, all right, Damian, I'm 23, I know who I am, I don't need to relabel myself, and I'm not that scared. Or I'm 53, it's way too late for me. This is an infographic that's not meant to be read, but it's by Anna Vital, works for Idioma, and you can Google this, Too Late to Start by Idioma. And the purpose of this particular infographic, what they did is they looked at the biographies of the founders of the top 100 companies in Forbes' biggest companies list. So the biggest companies in Forbes' list, they looked at who founded this company, and they looked at specifically what age did they found the company. And there's obviously a lot of companies that were founded by people in their 20s and 30s, but also companies that were founded in their 40s and 50s and even 60s. Sam Walton founded Walmart when he was 44 years old. Same for Sam Kimsey, founded AOL when he was 44 years old. The purpose of this particular infographic is to talk about societal expectations and norms, saying when you're supposed to succeed and when you shouldn't succeed. And they're calling it out and saying it's never too late to succeed. Now, what I took from this is something a little different. I can imagine that each of these founders, whether they were 20 years old, 40 years old, or 60 years old, when they decided to found their company, probably felt some degree of anxiety. Said, boy, this is a big thing I'm attempting to do here, to start a company, to found a company. Indeed, when I founded my own company, I felt anxiety. But rather than flee from it, they went towards it. And that's how we have companies like Walmart and these huge companies that turned out to be wonderful successes. So if you face your anxiety, something bad might happen, but something wonderful might happen as well. So what? So who cares? What are you trying to tell us, Damian? So I'm suggesting unjust yourself. You are not just any one thing. You're not just a tester. I'm not just a golfer or a bowler. You're not just a product manager. You're many things. Think about the labels that you put on yourself. Think about the labels that others put on you and you can't control. What do they explicitly say about you and what do they imply about you that may or may not be true? Use anxiety to your benefit. Whenever you're feeling anxious, realize that it's about uncertainty and you should consider going towards that thing instead of fleeing from it. And no matter your age, it's never too late, but don't wait. Do this activity today. Think about who you are, what labels you put on yourself, and start facing anxiety. And remember, you are more than that. Thank you. No, sorry, that's halfway, but thank you anyway. So, no, we got lots more to go. Okay, so now what, Damian? All right, so I'm on board. Labeling yourself is very important, and maybe I should face anxiety. So how do I do it? This particular talk is meant to be motivational and inspirational. It's not instructional. It's not a step-by-step guide. That said, I am going to suggest some things that might help you. If you decide that this is an important thing and you want to go forward and start thinking about the labels that you put on yourself and how to face anxiety, I'm going to give you some suggestions. So the first thing you might want to do is say, all right, Damian, I want to think about the different labels I put on myself, the different things that I am, that make me me. What's a good way of doing that? Now, there's a lot of different models out there. People model things in different ways, and they slice it and dice it, and they sell it. This is one model that I found that was very useful to me. When I was trying to think about who is Damian, not what does Damian do, but who am I, this was a model I found that helped me. And here's how it works. We're talking about rediscovering yourself as is to be. This is me, and I divided myself into 3 categories. The first is knowledge. These are things that I know. So when I was thinking about all the things that makes Damian Damian, I thought about what knowledge have I gained through the years? What things have I learned? Book learning, learning from experience. And I started to write them down. These are all the different things that I know. I also considered attributes. These are the things that I am. I'm curious. I'm passionate. I'm dependable, I think. These are things that I am. I can learn to be more compassionate or more dependable, but they're more difficult than just learning something out of a book, like a tool or a process. But these are things that I am. I'm empathetic. Skills. These are things that I know how to do. Now, sometimes a skill is simply just an attribute or some piece of knowledge that's been applied. So it might be reasonable to say, I read a book and I've learned how to juggle. So I have knowledge about how to juggle. And I took that knowledge and I applied it, and now I have a skill. I can juggle. And then somebody asks me, Damian, what are you? I might say, I am a juggler. It's an attribute of me. So it doesn't really matter which category you put it in, but sometimes this model might help you better think about all the different attributes, knowledge, and skills that make you you. It might be a way to help you categorize and classify these things. So this is a little list of different attributes, knowledge and skills, different things. I want you to just quickly glance over this list and raise your hand if you think that you use one or more of these things in your daily job. Lots of hands. Good. Sir, right there in the middle. Hi, what's your name? Yes, unfortunately you. Yes.
Hi, my name is Raymond.
Raymond. Everyone say hello, Raymond. Hi, Raymond, which one of these things did you pick, and what do you do, and how do you use it?
Probably a lot of, I've been trying to use visual modeling to understand some of the systems as well as documentation.
So visual modeling is one of these things that you use in your daily job to understand documentation?
Well, to understand the systems.
To understand systems. Okay, and what do you do?
I work as a QA at NetSuite.
All right, QA at NetSuite. Okay, anyone else that raised their hand? I think everyone in the crowd, so you're all under the gun right now. I can point at really anyone. You, sir, hello, what's your name?
Cameron.
Cameron, everyone say hello, Cameron. Hi, Cameron, did you raise your hand or did I falsely call you out? You did raise your hand. Whew. All right, which one of these things did you pick and why did you pick it? What do you do?
I am QA at a company called Analyst, and I'm going to pick communication.
Communication. How do you use communication as a tester, as a QA?
If I find a bug in the code, I have to communicate to the devs what it is and what triggered it.
Good. Not an information hoarder. Very good of you. Good tester. Yes. All right. Any non-testers that raised their hand? Anyone in here that's a non-tester? Right here? What's your name? I know your name, but for the benefit of everyone here, Graham, say hello, Graham.
Hi, Graham.
Graham, which one of these did you pick? You're not a tester?
No.
Okay.
Engineering manager.
Engineering manager. And which one of these things did you pick and
I
why?
was really kind of locked in on problem solving.
Problem solving. So how do you use problem solving as an engineering manager?
Frequently when the teams are kind of stuck coming up with a solution and they're kind of deadlocked or trying to come to one single conclusion, they need my help.
So you use problem solving to help your team solve problems, right? Okay, excellent. So what I did is I came up with this list. I went to Google and I typed in, Google, what are the absolute positively essential characteristics to be an effective business analyst? And I came up with lots and lots of results, all sorts of blog posts and articles and white papers. And as I began to go through them, certain attributes, qualities, and skills began to rise to the top. And these are the ones that were on almost every list. In order to be an effective BA, you have to be good at communication. You have to be self-reliant. You have to be empathetic to talk to the customers and understand their point of view. You have to be good at problem solving. I then went back to Google and I typed in, Google, what are the absolutely essential characteristics of an architect? Same process, a lot of different blogs and white papers and articles, and these are the same types of skills that came up. In order to be an effective architect, you also have to be good at problem solving. You have to have empathy because you deal with customers. Negotiation, cooperation. I did the same process again, but this time for plumber. It's true. In order to be a good plumber, you need all of these things to some degree. Now, obviously, there's specialized skills. To be a plumber and be a good plumber, you have to know about PVC and different wrenches and nuts and bolts and all these types of things. Now, those are specialized skills that are specific to some particular context or domain. And that applies to testers as well. If you want a talk that dives more deeply into testing, I suggest Multiplying the Odds by Fiona Charles. It's a wonderful talk that dives specific into things that you need to know specifically as a tester. But what you see here are transferable attributes, knowledge, and skills. These are things that apply whether you're a tester, engineering, whatever Graham is, whether you're an architect, a plumber. These are transferable between different contexts and domains. If you are good at these things, it helps you in many, many different areas and contexts. So I'd like to give a little demonstration of how this works. But first, I want to talk about the T model. This started by McKinsey & Company in the 1980s. Has anybody ever heard of the T model? T-shaped person? Some hands. This is roughly what it means. A T model represents a single person, and the crossbar of the T represents the breadth of their knowledge, all the different things that they know. And the vertical bar in the T represents that thing that they're really, really good at, their specialty. Now, that was a great model, but it's not terribly accurate because how many people are only really good at one thing, have one specialty? Most people are good at more than one thing. Ashley Friedline in 2012 took the T model and turned it into the pie-shaped person, the pie model. He said, same thing. The crossbar represents all the different things that we're good at, and the vertical bars mean you're good at two things. This is the breadth of knowledge, but you have two specialties. Well, people started to build on that, and they added more and more verticals. So, well, I'm not good at one thing or two things. I'm good at more than that. And you kept adding more and more, and this type of model is referred to by many different names. Specialized generalist, or sometimes generalized specialist. Emily Wapnick has a TED Talk where she calls them multi-potentialites. Sometimes you've heard of jack of all trades. Renaissance person. These are phrases and terms that represent somebody that has multiple talents, is good at multiple things. Now, you know what this kind of looks like? It looks like this. It looks a little bit like a comb. This is a much more robust model than a T or the Greek letter pi. The breadth of it represents all the different things that you're good at, and the teeth in the comb represent an individual attribute, knowledge, or skill. So each tooth in the comb represents curiosity or compassion or empathy, or your knowledge of Jira or Selenium, or that you can juggle or are a golfer. But the model itself is still broken. It's broken because not everyone is equally good at all things. I'm not just as compassionate as I am at golf. I'm way worse at golf. So how do you break this model? Or how do you fix the model? You fix it by breaking the comb. This isn't my idea. This came from Jared Spool, also in 2012. At a Chicago area meetup, he suggested the comb-shaped person. And again, each tooth in the comb represents some attribute, some knowledge, some skill that you possess. The length of the tooth represents how good you are at it, your self-assessment. So I might have a very, very short tooth in the comb that represents golf, but perhaps a longer tooth that represents empathy, and a very long tooth that represents curiosity. My testing tooth is very long. I have a lot of experience in testing. And the nice thing about this model is everyone's comb looks different. Everyone has different attributes, knowledge, and skills, so not only the teeth of the comb are different, but they're different lengths. So this model can help me better visualize. If I'm trying to put labels on myself, I might say, all right, I'm going to categorize them according to attributes, knowledge, and skills, and I'm going to use this visual model of a comb to better recognize who I am. What are my skills, the long teeth in the comb, and what are the short teeth in the comb? Areas that I have it, but I'm not very good at it. Another reason that this particular model is useful is it can help you when you're building a team. Let's say you're trying to build a team and you've identified different things, different attributes, knowledge, and skills that are necessary for this team. So there's three, Huey, Dewey, and Louie's comb. And Huey's good at this thing while Dewey's not very good at it. And Dewey and Louie are both good at the same thing. Well, when you slide these combs together, you can very quickly see where the gaps are. You can see, oh, well, somebody on the team is very empathetic, and that's something that we identified that we need. Somebody on the team knows Jira. Somebody on the team knows Selenium. But we don't have anybody that's good at documentation. Now, you can go and train that person, or perhaps hire someone that's good at it, but it makes it very easy to identify what skills, attributes, or knowledge are missing if you're trying to form a team. Now, one thing that came up in Bailey's talk is you moved quality to the left. Not the testing mindset, but it was the idea that many people have many different skills. And you said that you're moving towards an everyone test. And I agree with that. I think everyone testing is a wonderful thing within reason. If you remember that while everyone can certainly test, some people have strengths in testing. Some people have longer teeth in their comb that represents testing. And to ignore that would be foolish. Just like saying that only testers test is foolish, it's also foolish to say everyone tests equally as well. So remember who has strengths and who has weaknesses. And when you think of the short teeth in your comb, think how you can make them longer. Do you need to train that person? Hire them. So let's talk more about that. This is a guy named Steve. Ever heard of him? Steve Jobs. Little known fact, he went to Reed College. Another little known fact, he founded a company called Apple. True story. So he was giving a commencement address at Stanford in 2005 talking about his past and experience. And he said while he was at Reed College, he took a calligraphy course. And then soon after, he dropped out, and many years later, he went on to create the Apple computer. While he was designing the computer, he realized that all of his knowledge that he had learned in calligraphy class at Reed College became very, very relevant. His knowledge of types, typesets, serif and sans serif fonts, how far apart different characters should be from one another, he used that to design the fonts on the Apple computer, and it was really the first personal computer that had beautiful fonts, which was part of the success of Apple computer. So he said in his commencement address, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So looking backwards, he said, man, I never realized that my calligraphy class at Reed College would someday pay off and help me found one of the most successful computer companies. So he was able to connect the dots looking backwards. And I believe that that's true. You can't predict the future. That said, it doesn't hurt to try. When you're thinking about your comb and the different things that you are, the things that you know, the things that you do, think what attributes, knowledge, or skills might benefit me in the future. Say, well, I know how to cook, but that's not important to being a tester. Maybe it is. Maybe following recipes and knowing when to go off recipe and knowing when to test the broth just to make sure it's right. Maybe those are qualities that would be beneficial as a tester. So I would encourage you, try and connect the dots looking forward. Think about maybe calligraphy will be useful for me someday, and add it to your comb because you really don't know. I'm going to exemplify this with an improv game. I mentioned that I'm an improviser. I have 10, 12 years of experience, but I'm not going to stand up here and do improv by myself. What I need is volunteers. So now if you're going to sink down in your chair, now's the time. I need 3 volunteers. 2 of you need to be brave, bold, quick-witted, loud, clever. The last one needs to have a watch. Okay, you have a watch. All right, so we have a watch, a timekeeper. Nishi, come on up here. I need 2 more volunteers, please. Not everyone at once. We have, okay, this is Jake in the back, and I had a wonderful conversation with him. He is an improviser. He's an improvising class right now. So come up on stage, Nishi. And Jake, I need 1 more volunteer. Right there, come on up. Round of applause for our brave volunteers. I know you, Nishi. Thank you for coming. Jake, thank you for coming. What's your name?
Cindy.
Cindy, everyone say hello, Cindy. All right, Nishi, you said you have the watch. You're going to be the timekeeper, all right? So Jake, you stand over here next to Cindy. We're going to play a game called Old Job, New Job, and I'm going to describe how this game works in just a moment. But as with all improv games, it has to start with a suggestion. What I need from you, crowd, are suggestions of occupations, jobs, titles. Now, they can be normal and mundane or fantastical and wild and crazy. So start yelling them out. I'm going to pick a couple. Surgeon, boring. Something more crazy. No, I heard surgeon. What else?
Scuba instructor.
Scuba instructor. Test pilot, all right. Cowboy. Two astronauts. All right, well, astronaut's got to be one. And we'll go with, I heard cowboy. That's a job, right? Wrangling and all that. All right, so would you like to be the cowboy or the astronaut? Who wants to be the cowboy? Are you actually an astronaut?
No.
Okay, well, in improv you are. So now Cindy is an astronaut. All right, and you will be the cowboy? All right, so here's how this game's going to work. Nishi, I need you to get your watch ready. I'm going to talk to you about my new job I just got. My new job is testing. I'm going to talk for 30 seconds. At the end of 30 seconds, you wave your arms and say, "Shut up, Damian." And I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. And Cindy, you're going to talk about being an astronaut. A day in the life, just what it's like to be an astronaut. And you know everything about astronauting because you're an improviser. Yes, exactly. And then I'm going to talk about my job again after 30 seconds, okay? You tell her to stop, and then I talk for 30 seconds, and then back over to Jake. He's going to tell you all about being a cowboy. And after 30 seconds, you say, "Stop, Jake," and I'm going to finish it up for 30 seconds. Okay, makes sense? Okay, so let me tell you about my new job. I just got a new job recently. I'm a software tester. It's fantastic. Now, a lot of times when I test, I get requirements in front of me and specifications, and that's how I start. I look at them in the system, shall be this and shall do that as a user. But sometimes I push those off to the side. I say, I'm not going to start with this. I'm going to pretend like I don't know anything about the application. A clean slate, and I just pretend that I'm a user, and I start poking and prodding and clicking buttons and acting like a real user just to see what happens. And okay, I'm sorry. So, Cindy, tell me how it is to be an astronaut, please.
So being an astronaut, a lot of the time, all you do is preparing. You don't actually get to go to space very often. Only a very small few people get to go to space, and when they do, they don't get to stay there very long. But you spend all of your time getting ready to go to space. So you get to go underwater and practice. You get to build things and problem solve. It's actually a lot of meetings, which is really weird, but you do sit around and talk a lot about all the things.
Thank you very much, Cindy. That's fascinating, and it's not one of my stickers, I forgot to say. My old job, I used to be an astronaut as well. It's true, and I really didn't think that there would be much relevance, being an astronaut to being a tester, but it turns out that just like being an astronaut, there's so much preparation. If I'm going to test an application, oftentimes I'll spend a large percent of my time preparing, talking to developers, learning more about the application before I actually put fingers to keyboard. And there's certainly, just like astronauting, a lot of meetings and testing. And sometimes I get to go in different environments like a pool. Yeah, go ahead. Tell me about being a cowboy, Jake.
Yeah, I'm a cowboy. I wear a lot of different hats. Eye contact's very important when you're sizing somebody up. You gotta pay attention to quality. You gotta have a fine gun, fine liquor. You gotta have a good taste in your companions as well. You have a nice fine horse.
Thank you very much, Cowboy Jake. It's not a sticker, but I was a cowboy as well. As unbelievable that sounds, and again, I didn't think that it would have much relevance to my new job as a tester, but it does. And I mean, almost exactly as you said, I'm wearing a lot of hats as a tester. I'm wearing a testing hat where I'm interrogating the product, but then I have to take it off and put a customer hat on and pretend like I'm a proxy and an advocate for the customer. And sometimes I have to manage things. I have to manage my own time and my work and quality. You have to find a fine gun and fine liquor. Quality is all about testing and all about cowboying, trust me. So it turned out that there was a lot of similarities that I took from cowboying to being a tester. Thank you very much. Give it up for our volunteers. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Cindy. So that was hopefully sufficiently ridiculous. Intending to show that just like Steve Jobs didn't know that calligraphy might someday help him design the Apple computer, I didn't realize that being a cowboy or an astronaut was going to help me as a tester. But if you think about the different attributes, knowledge, and skills, especially those that aren't specialized, those that are transferable between one context and another, you realize that you have a lot of potential. You can be a lot of different things. You can be an architect, a BA, and if things go south in your career, you can even go and be a plumber. So, a little bit more about this. This is Ralph Macchio as Daniel Larusso in The Karate Kid. Now, there's some young faces out there, so I want to be clear. I'm 45 years old. This is The Karate Kid. This is not The Karate Kid, okay? The next Karate Kid. Nor is this. I'm sorry. The reboot does not count. There is only one Karate Kid. Thank you. It's Daniel Larusso. Now, I like this movie for a lot of reasons. I grew up with this movie. But there's a scene in it that really is relevant to what I'm talking about right now. So Daniel Larusso, he's a high school student out in California, and he moves to a new school, and he's getting roughed up by some local thugs, and they're beating him up and causing him harm, and he doesn't like it. So eventually he goes to his landlord, Mr. Miyagi, and he says, Mr. Miyagi, I keep getting beat up by these punks, and I want to defend myself. Can you teach me karate? And Mr. Miyagi says, yes, I will teach you karate. Come back tomorrow, and we'll start your training. So Daniel comes to Mr. Miyagi's house the first day, and Mr. Miyagi says, get down and please sand my deck. He has this huge deck around his house, and he gives Daniel these sand things, and he just sits on the ground all day long, and he's sanding and sanding and sanding in circles, and his shoulders are tired, and it's nighttime, and Mr. Miyagi says, your first day of training is done. Go home and return tomorrow. So Daniel comes back the next day, and he says, all right, I'm ready for my next day of training, and Mr. Miyagi says, paint my fence. So Daniel goes and paints his fence all the way around his entire property. It takes all day, and he's so sore. Mr. Miyagi says, you're doing great. Come back tomorrow for more training. Daniel comes back, and very famously, Mr. Miyagi has 12 cars, and Mr. Miyagi says, Daniel, I want you to wax my cars. So Daniel spends all day waxing on and taking the wax off and waxing on and waxing off. And at the end of the day, he comes to Mr. Miyagi, and he says, look, I came to you for help learning karate. You're not teaching me any karate at all. You're having me do all your household chores. I want you to teach me karate, and you haven't taught me anything. And Mr. Miyagi says, or have I? And Mr. Miyagi goes to strike Daniel, and the most famous scene, Daniel waxes off and blocks his strike. Now, that's the appropriate response, I think, yeah. Now, why is it relevant? Because Daniel didn't think that doing these household chores and sanding decks and waxing cars and painting fences had anything to do with karate. But it turns out the movements that he was doing when he was waxing cars and when he was painting fences and sanding floors, these are the fundamental movements in karate. You can block kicks and punches by doing these things. So in fact, Mr. Miyagi was teaching him karate all along, although Daniel didn't even realize it. He was learning something without recognizing it from someone else. Learning something from others is something that Kevin O'Leary talks about too. He was on Shark Tank. He's famous for that, Dragon's Den, and other parts of the world. So Canadian businessman, he had an article in 2018 where he talks about the value of business school. And of course, he talks about the things that he learned in class and all the things he learned from getting his business school degree. But he also very much stresses in the article the things he learned outside of class, the things he learned when he went to networking events and social parties and in the cafeteria and walking between classes and from his fellow students that were outside of his classroom. And he says, the more skills that I put in my toolbox, the greater my chance of success. So certainly while school was valuable in a classroom setting, he also recognized that he was getting attributes, knowledge, and skills outside of the class as well. And he was adding those to his tool belt, to his toolbox. And the more of those things that you have, the more tools and the more sharp and honed that they are, the better your chances of success. So this is all about extracurricular. Extracurricular is what he's talking about. Extra is a prefix that means outside of or beyond. He was talking about extracurricular, outside of the curriculum of a school. But the extra is there's extraterrestrials outside of the world. There's extra, you can put that in front of a lot of different worlds. What about extra professional? Again, when you're thinking about the labels that you put on yourself, think about things that have nothing to do with your job or your career. Things that have nothing to do with your work. Are you a golfer? Are you a bowler? Are you a card player? Think about those things. Are you a calligraphy expert? Are you an astronaut? Are you a robot pirate pig? Think about those things when you're thinking about the labels and the teeth in your comb, and then think how good are you at those things. So, back to these labels. You look down, you probably have some hello, I'm labels and some markers. Now, as I said before, oftentimes it has your name, your title, and the place where you work. Instead, I'd like you each to grab a pen and fill it out thusly, with one attribute, one knowledge, one skill. Something that you are. You're curious, you're passionate, you're dependable, you're lazy. Something that you know, some piece of knowledge that you've gained in your life, something that you can do. But wait, there's a catch. It can't have anything to do with your job. It's extra professional. outside of your profession, outside of your daily work duties. I want you to write down something that you know, something that you are, and something that you do that has to do with you and not your job. So I'll give you 1 minute, and then we'll tie this up.
That's kind of the point. This is very difficult.
This is a very difficult exercise. I've done this all over the world, and people always struggle with this. It's not easy. Educator, awesome. Good. What else? Keep going. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Building drones, very interesting. Ah. Easy going. Nice. Tough? Easy?
I am a stickerless person.
All right, in the interest of time, because beer is just on the other side of me, let's tie this up. As I said, this is a difficult exercise. Thinking about who you are and the things that make you you outside of your work can sometimes be a difficult thing. In my experience, and even personally and what I've seen in others, oftentimes when I looked in a mirror, I saw just a tester. But once I realized that I was much more than that, I realized that I have a lot of current value and I have a lot of potential value, and I realized how I could make myself better. So what? I would encourage each of you to wear these, and if you're going to the networking event later and you're drinking beers and you walk up to somebody you haven't met, don't ask them, what do you do or where do you work? Ask them about their label. Who are you, rather than what do you do? So what? So why does any of this matter? Here's the summary. Consider the labels that you put on yourself. What do they explicitly mean and about you, and what might they implicitly mean? And is that thing true or not necessarily true? Use anxiety. Understand that anxiety is about uncertainty and paradoxically also not worrying about something but desiring for it, and go towards it. Sometimes some wonderful things will happen. It's never too late, but don't wait. Regardless of your age, you can always do these activities and make yourself better. Find out who you are. Use those different models that I suggested to help you categorize and classify your attributes, knowledge, and skills. Visualize it. Think of yourself as a broken comb. Which of your teeth are long and which of your teeth are short, and how can you make those short teeth longer? You might make them longer by connecting the dots, thinking of things that you already know that could help you in some other area. You might learn from yourself and from others, like Mr. Miyagi taught Daniel. He learned from someone else. So what can you learn from existing skills, attributes, and knowledge that you already have, and what can you learn from others? Unjust yourself. You're not just any one thing. Rediscover yourself. Figure out who you are right now and who you can be. And remember, you're more than that. I'm Damian. I'm a speaker from Ineffable Solutions. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as promised, it is well into beer 30. I think it's time to go drink. The networking event starts immediately upstairs at the Bruce. All right. Thank you, folks, for your time. Thank you.